Hello, everyone, welcome back to the Impact Report. Please subscribe and like my videos. Today we're plunging headfirst into one of the most explosive developments in Eastern Europe that's gripping the world. Generals break silence. Lukashenko loses control as Minsk erupts. This isn't just another round of simmering discontent. It's a full-throated roar from the heart of Belarus, where decades of suppressed fury have finally boiled over into what could be the regime's death knell. Alexander Lukashenko, the self-styled Batska, or father figure who's ruled this landlocked nation with an iron fist since 1994, is staring down the barrel of his biggest threat yet. What started as whispers of dissatisfaction in the wake of rigged elections and brutal crackdowns has snowballed into open mutiny, with top military brass publicly denouncing his orders, streets choked with tens of thousands of protesters, and the capital city of Minsk transforming overnight from a symbol of stoic control to a battlefield of burning tires and defiant chants. Imagine the scene: the red and white-striped flag of independent Belarus, not the Soviet-era red banner Lukashenko clings to fluttering defiantly above crowds that stretch from Independence Avenue all the way to the towering obelisk of the National Library, a structure that's ironically meant to symbolize the regime's grip on information, but now stands as a beacon for free speech. This uprising isn't imported from afar. It's homegrown, fueled by years of economic stagnation, forced conscription into Russia's war machine, and the fresh sting of 2025 sham presidential vote, where Lukashenko once again won, with over 80% in numbers no one believes. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We'll dissect this layer by layer, starting with the raw, visible chaos unfolding across Belarus's urban landscapes, where the exterior of the nation is cracking wide open like a fault line under immense pressure. Picture this: the exterior of Belarus, that vast expanse of flat, forested plains dotted with Soviet-era concrete behemoths and golden, domed Orthodox churches, has always projected an image of calculated order under Lukashenko's watchful eye. From the wide boulevards of Minsk lined with identical panel, block apartments to the rolling fields of potatoes and wheat that feed a population of just over 9 million, the country's outward face has been one of unyielding stability, a buffer state squeezed between NATO's eastern flank and Russia's sprawling shadow. But now, in late 2025, that facade is shattering. Protests aren't confined to the capital. They've erupted in Grodno near the Polish border, where migrant crises engineered by the regime to poke at the EU have backfired spectacularly, turning locals against the very policies that promised leverage. In Brest, on the Ukrainian frontier, crowds gather outside military barracks, their voices amplified by megaphones calling for soldiers to lay down arms rather than march into Putin's quagmire. The air is thick with the acrid smoke of improvised barricades, old tires from the factories that once symbolized Lukashenko's industrial pride, now set ablaze to slow the advance of riot-geared Oman forces. These aren't ragtag gatherings. They're meticulously organized via encrypted apps like Telegram channels run by exiled activists, drawing in factory workers from the Bell AZ truck plants, students from Belarusian State University, and even disillusioned pensioners who've seen their rubles devalue. Year after year under sanctions and mismanagement, the landscape itself seems to rebel. In the chill November winds sweeping across the Nemiga River, protesters link arms in human chains that recall the 2020 singing revolution, their breaths visible in plumes as they belt out Mahatma Bunt, the anthem of resistance. Armored personnel carriers, those hulking BTR-80s painted in the drab green of Belarusian forces, rumble down Oktyabrskaya Square, their treads grinding against cobblestones laid in the Tsarist era, but for the first time they're met not with fleeing crowds, but with volleys of fireworks, repurposed as distractions, lasers aimed at helicopter spotlights overhead. Further afield, in the rural exteriors of Vitebsk up north, where Mark Chagall once drew inspiration from Jewish shtetls, Farmers blockade highways with tractors, their cargo of hay bales stacked high to halt troop movements toward the Russian border. This exterior turmoil paints a portrait of a nation uncoiling, its geography no longer a cage, but a stage for collective defiance, where every burnt, lined road and marshy floodplain echoes with the demand for sovereignty. And as night falls, the glow from smartphone screens illuminates faces etched with determination, capturing footage that's beamed worldwide, turning local sparks into international infernos. It's a visual symphony of rupture, where the exterior world of Belarus, once a monotonous gray, bursts into vivid reds of flags and oranges of flames, signaling that the center truly cannot hold. Transitioning deeper into the heart of this maelstrom, we must examine the interior, the hidden machinations, the whispered corridors of power where loyalties fracture like ice on the frozen Visibly river that winds through Minsk. This is where the real drama unfolds, not in the streets but behind the bulletproof glass and oak, paneled doors of the House of Government, that imposing Stalinist skyscraper on Independence Avenue that served as Lukashenko's fortress for 30 years. Inside these walls, the air is stale with the scent of stale tobacco and polished leather, where generals in crisp olive uniforms, men like Major General Viktor Krenin, the defense minister who's long been Lukashenko's enforcer, now pace carpeted halls, their faces gaunt under the harsh fluorescence of chandeliers imported from Moscow. The interior of the regime is a labyrinth of surveillance and suspicion. Hidden microphones in conference rooms capture every murmur, while state security agents, the KGB modern heirs, sift through dossiers thicker than Minsk phone books, referencing loyalty oaths with bank records and family ties. But in the wake of the generals, public break a leaked video from October 2025 showing a cluster of high-ranking officers in a dimly lit officers' club, toasting not to the president but to a free Belarus. The interior has become a pressure cooker. Imagine the opulent yet oppressive office of Lukashenko himself, walls lined with portraits of Lenin and portraits of himself shaking hands with Putin, a massive desk cluttered with reports from the All-Belarusian People's Assembly, that rubber-stamped body he convened to rubber-stamp his eternal rule. Here, aides scurry like shadows, delivering encrypted dispatches from the Western Operational Command in Grodno, where colonels have begun shredding orders to deploy against civilians, their shredders humming like the distant roar of protest chants filtering through triple glazed windows. Deeper still, in the subterranean bunkers beneath the Ministry of Defense, relics from the Cold War era, concrete vaults reinforced against nuclear blasts, technicians monitor radar screens tracking not just Ukrainian drones but internal dissent, their consoles flickering with feeds from body cams on loyalist troops. Yet even here cracks Spiderweb, a young lieutenant, son of a 2020 political prisoner, slips USB drives loaded with opposition manifestos into colleagues' lockers, whispering of Tikhanovskaya's calls from exile in Vilnius for a general strike. The interior extends to the private realms, the dachas on the outskirts where generals host clandestine meetings over bottles of Belarus vodka, maps of troop deployments unrolled across dining tables scarred by years of tense suppers. Wives, long silenced by fear, now murmur encouragements drawn from smuggled copies of 1984, drawing parallels to their own big brother. In the presidential residence at Drozhdy, a gated enclave of neoclassical villas amid manicured pines, Lukashenko's inner circle gathers in panic. His son Viktor, the enforcer, in waiting, slams fists on antique sideboards, demanding purges, while advisors scroll frantic WeChat groups with Kremlin contacts, pleading for Spets as reinforcements. But the interior betrayal runs deeper. In the vast archives of the National Archives building, clerks quietly digitize evidence of election fraud from 2020, preparing dossiers for the International Criminal Court. Hospitals like the Ninth City Clinical interior wards overflowing with the wounded from early clashes become hubs of hushed solidarity. Doctors, many of whom walked out in 2020, now treat protesters while slipping painkillers to undercover agents turned informants. Even the opulent Bolshoi Theater on the riverbank, its red velvet interiors usually reserved for state ballets glorifying the regime, hosts secret gatherings in basement green rooms, where actors and stagehands plot flash mobs disguised as rehearsals. This interior world is a tapestry of tension, where every locked door hides a potential turncoat, every flickering candle in a power outage reveals maps marked with safe houses coordinated by the Coordination Council from abroad. The psychological toll is immense. Insomnia grips the elite, their dreams haunted by the ghosts of Kurapati forest massacres from Stalin's time, now invoked in graffiti spray, painted on interior metro station walls, no more graves. Loyalty, once bought with datchas and promotions, erodes like the peeling frescoes in ancient Minsk monasteries, replaced by a burgeoning network of whispers that link the presidential palace to the cramped apartments of ordinary Minsk residents, where families huddle around samizdat radios tuned to the voice of America, in boardrooms of state-owned giants like MAZ truck factories, executives' interiors of glass, walled offices overlooking assembly lines divert funds not to regime coffers, but to printing presses churning out leaflets. The KGB Lubyanka, Galike headquarters on Karl Marx Street, buzzes with defections. Analysts feeding tips to EU intelligence, their interiors of filing cabinets now echoing empty. This interior fracture isn't abstract. It's visceral, a slow-motion implosion where the regime's core built on fear and patronage hollows out from within, leaving Lukashenko isolated in his gilded cage, screaming orders into dead phone lines as his generals, those stern-faced guardians of interior order, choose history over obedience. It's a realm of shadows and secrets unraveling thread by thread, proving that no fortress, no matter how impenetrable from the outside, can withstand the rot starting at its heart. Shifting our focus to the performance, the raw, unscripted theater playing out on both sides of this divide, we see an extraordinary display of human endurance and tactical ingenuity amid the bedlam. On the protesters' side, the performance is one of choreographed chaos, thousands converging at October Square, not as a mob, but as a living mosaic, women in white scarves, the symbol of the 2020 Mothers' Marches, linking arms with burly welders from the Minsk tractor works, their chant synchronized like a flash mob, Lukashen, ka idzi hodizi, Lukashenko, go away. These aren't amateurs, drawn from Belarus's proud tradition of choral societies and folk dance troupes. They weave through tear gas clouds with precision, using shopping carts from local markets as mobile shields, their wheels squeaking in rhythmic defiance. Leaders emerge organically, a 22-year-old IT coder from the High Technologies Park, Minsk's Silicon Slavyansk, hacks streetlights to flicker in Morse code spelling freedom, while grizzled ex-soldiers from the Afghan War era teach evasion tactics honed in Kabul's alleys. The performance peaks in night vigils, where acoustic guitars strum Vysotsky ballads under the gaze of riot police, turning potential violence into a spectacle of moral high ground that sways fence-sitting conscripts. Conversely, the regime's forces deliver a performance of faltering ferocity. Almond squads in black balaclavas, their AK-74 shouldered but triggers itchy, advance in phalanxes that crumble at the edges as individuals hesitate, haunted by viral videos of colleagues beating grandmothers in 2020. General speeches, broadcast from the state TV interior, crackle with rehearsed bluster Krenin thundering about foreign agents, but ring hollow as rank and file troops, performing their drills in empty fields, mutter about unpaid wages and sons dying in Donbas. It's a high-stakes ballet where one side dances with hope, the other with desperation, each step amplifying the other's resolve until the stage Minsk's frost-kissed plazas threatens to collapse under the weight of it all. When it comes to safety features, this crisis exposes a dire ledger of vulnerabilities that underscore the human stakes in Belarus's turmoil. For protesters, makeshift safety is ingenuity incarnate. Balaclavas soaked in vinegar neutralize CS gas, while community networks deploy humanitarian corridors via apps pinpointing safe routes past checkpoints, drawing on the same tech that powered the 2020 chain of solidarity. Yet the regime's arsenal tells a grimmer tale: rubber bullets that fracture skulls, water cannons in sub-zero temps risking hypothermia, and non-lethal flashbangs that blind and deafen, all deployed with a callousness honed over years of suppressing strikes at Belarus, Kali potash mines. Interior Ministry reports, leaked to Nexta, reveal stockpiles of safety equipment. That's anything but expired riot gear from Russian suppliers. Vehicles like the VM-95 Ursus riot trucks prone to overheating in crowds. For the military defectors, safety means smuggling families across the Lithuanian border under cover of blizzards, using forest paths trodden by WW2 partisans. Overall, the absence of true safety, no independent observers, no de-escalation protocols turns every rally into a roulette, where the only shield is collective courage, and the biggest hazard remains Lukashenko's parent, oil-fueled escalations. What sets this moment apart as unique selling points in the annals of modern revolts? First, the general's silence, breaking. Unlike Egypt's 2011 generals who hedged, Belarus's brass has gone full-throated, issuing manifestos via anonymous X accounts citing constitutional oaths over personal fealty, a digital twist on Gorbachev's perestroika. Second, Minsk's eruption leverages hyper-local symbols: the stork, Belarus's national bird, emblazoned on protest banners as a nod to renewal, blending folklore with fury in a way that resonates deeper than generic calls for democracy. Third, the ripple to Russia's underbelly, with Belarus as Putin's staging ground for Ukraine incursions. This instability threatens supply lines, forcing Moscow into a bind where intervention risks backlash at home. These edges make Belarus's story not just another color revolution, but a potential domino with seismic global aftershocks. Finally, the price-o, the staggering toll. Economically, sanctions have already slashed GDP by 10% since 2022, with inflation gnawing at 20% as the ruble freefalls. A full collapse could balloon refugee flows to Poland and Lithuania by hundreds of thousands, costing the EU billions in aid. Humanly, it's bloodier: over 500 arrested in the first week of Minsk's 2025 flare-up, with reports of torture in Okrestina detention center echoing 2020's horrors: beatings, electric shocks, forced confessions. Geopolitically, the price tag includes strained Kremlin ties if Lukashenko falls, potentially $50 billion in lost military basing rights for Russia, while the West eyes a democratic foothold at NATO's door. Yet, in this ledger of loss, the currency of hope gleams, a people paying with their bodies for a future untethered. In conclusion, as Minsk's embers smolder and Lukashenko's throne wobbles, this eruption isn't merely a crisis, it's Belarus reclaiming its soul. From exterior flames to interior whispers, the performance of defiance outshines the shadows of fear. We've covered the safety perils, the unique sparks that ignite wider fires, and the price exacted in blood and Belarusian tears. The path forward, murky, with Russian bears lurking and winter biting harder. But one thing's clear: the silence is broken, control is lost, and the world watches as a nation dares to dream. Thanks for joining Global Conflict News. Subscribe, like, share your take below. Until next time, stay vigilant in these turbulent times.